Pulling the cards out of the deck. You guys can leave as soon as we pull 2 red cards. And nobody ever did. I'll let you go anyway because I'm a nice guy. Alan was pissed, wanted to see the deck. I wouldn't let him. Alan's not here yet. Wouldn't let him see the deck. Why wouldn't I let you guys see the deck yesterday? Tuesday.
Because you messed with it.
Why wouldn't I let you see the deck yesterday?
Because we don't get to know.
Because you don't get to see the deck in statistics. What is the deck? The deck is your population. You don't get to see the deck, whether it's messed with or not. You never get to see it. So what do you get to see? You get to see your sample, and you get to mess with your sample data, and you get to do something with that. You never get to see the deck. That's the great difference between 243 and 244. In 243, you got to see the deck. And many times, this is kind of going to sound a little bit weird, but the deck was your sample. You collected sample data. You found its average, you found its median, you drew a box plot, you drew its histogram, and you made claims about that. That's totally fine. In a sense, you saw the deck, you had everything in front of you, and you made a call based on that. You also, in a lot of times in 243, saw the deck, like the chickens, for example. We did the chicken experiment in 243. I was told by the guy at the store that 90% of chickens, sexed as female, actually are female.
What? Oh, how are they doing?
They look like girls. They're not trying to bite my ankles yet. They're not growing big combs. We'll see. They're only about a month old. But as soon as he told me 90% that are sexed as girls are girls, I've got an entire population described by that, don't I? You've got if you don't remember, that's okay. It's been like 3 or 4 weeks. I've got a little review built into today about that as well. But in a lot of ways in 243, you had all the cards. You had them all in front of you, and then you could make decisions based on that. The difference between 244 and 243 is you're not allowed to have all the cards. You're allowed to have a sampling of the cards. And the idea is, what information can you get from that sample back to the original population? Okay? And somebody, what did I ask? One of the last questions I asked on Tuesday was, what if you only drew 1,000 from a sample of 150 million, and it was a good random sample? I said, how good of an answer did you get? And somebody said a crappy one or something along those lines. And what was my surprise response? As long as it's good data, you can get a lot from that little teeny tiny sample. Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can get. So the last 2 quizzes I'll post for next week are actually tied back to the card problem, which I want to look at today. I want to start by looking at that today. Let me fire that up real quick. You guys have any questions about that? Recap from Tuesday? Anything lingering that's bothering you from that first day? So I do want to go back and look at that again. Start with that, actually. All right, here we go. So here, got it. Here is something. It's coming. I promise. Austin, would you mind killing one? Thanks, man. So here's the deal. When we did the card experiment, put this over here. Close this. Perfect. One of 2 things is true about that deck. One of 2 things, and you don't know which. What you know is one of them is true. Either the deck is fair. When I say fair, what do I mean? What is not messed with? Oh, good. 26 red, 26 black. Not unmessed with. A poker deck. I pulled the jokers out. So a poker deck of cards, no messing has taken place. So they're either 26 red, 26 black, or not 26 red, 26 black. You guys make some pretty strong claims. You said things like, they're all black. You probably don't mean that. That's probably just reactionary because you want to get the hell out of here on Tuesday. What you probably meant was what?
The deck was
messed with. Good. That's a less strongly worded. Not fair is a much more generous phrasing of your claim, right? Because there might have just been what in the deck? Not as many red cards as there should have been. Maybe there were, that could be a claim that you made. Maybe there were too few red cards. Having all black cards definitely is too few red cards. But even if there were a quarter red and 3/4 black, that would still be unfair and skewed. So the idea is, one of those 2 things is true. In 243, you would grab the deck, give me that, fan it out and look, and be able to make the call. And then it would be a 0-1, 100% or 0%. Either that's true or that's true, and you would know. And that was 243, and that was great, because 243's point was how to collect data, and once you have all the data, describe a center, describe a spread, and go with that. Yay. But this is 244, and this is when you have to use inference on a sample set of data. So you draw some samples, and make a claim. The deck isn't fair, or the deck is fair. What did you go, when I pulled the deck of cards out and said, okay, pull a red card, we leave. What was your original gut feeling about the deck I was holding in my hand?
Second card.
Well, before we even started pulling cards.
It's fair.
There's no reason to think it's not, right? I mean, I pull a deck of cards out, I hold it out. I made no claims about it, but I'm sure your minds went right to, oh, it's half red, it's half black, I'm going to pull a red card, get the hell out of here. And then we analyzed what's the likelihood of pulling a red card, and on average, how many we have to pull. But pretty much you guys, in your minds, I'm guessing, unless you assume that I'm a bastard and I want to have a screw with deck of cards. But I mean, if you don't know me from Adam, there's no reason to think that that's not true, right? So this will be the default setting for your reason, is that the deck is fair. And what's important about that is whenever you do a statistical study, you have to have a default belief system set in place. There has to be a default belief system set in place. For example, to go away from this for just a second, it might be that you're developing a new drug for migraine relief, and you want it to show that it's more effective than your leading competitor, or the leading competitor that would be in the market for you if you market your drug. That drug would be the default setting. Its rate of relief is already established, so therefore it would be the default setting. It would be the, if you will, fair deck. And then your drug would try to move away from that and be better than that fair deck. Lenny, go ahead and ask that
I was
question.
just thinking like a positive and a negative.
That's exactly what this is, yes! That's exactly what this becomes. It becomes your fourth project in 243. So, there's 4 things, hopefully you see this, there's 4 things that can happen here. Either the deck is fair, and you say it's not. The deck is fair, and you say it is. The deck isn't fair, and you say it's not. And the deck isn't fair, and you say it is. So there's 4 things that can happen. Just like you flip a coin twice, or draw 2 cards, there's 4 things that can happen. Red, black, black, red, black, black, red, red. Much the same way, except it's not quite as symmetric as that because these things have contextual differences. So let's look at the first one up there. Suppose the deck is fair, which means that deck that we were playing with in class was completely fair, half red, half black. But every single person, I shouldn't say that, the people I heard from on Tuesday all said, ah! Some of you said it by the 3rd, Jolene, I think it was you said by the 3rd card, you're full of it rule. But by the 5th card, I think most of, how many of you by the 5th card were like the deck's rigged? The deck's rigged. How many of you said, ah, it'd still be fine? For those of you that didn't vote, what were you thinking? So about 7 of you said, yeah, the deck's rigged, you're a bastard. 2 of you were like, no, the deck could totally be fine. But that was like 9 people. How about the rest of you? What were you thinking? Just get me out of here? Want to be done? Want to be done. All right. So this is the most popular claim of those voting. Well, that's an oops, isn't it? We call that a false positive. Why would it be called a false positive? If that were the situation, why would that be a false positive? Because the deck was fair, meaning nothing changed. It's like going in for a disease test. I'm going in to get my Lyme disease tested, right? And I don't have it, but the test comes back and says I do. The status quo is maintained. There is no Lyme disease in your body, but the test says there is. So no Lyme disease would be the status quo, the default setting in a healthy person. Just like a fair deck would be the default setting in a healthy person or a healthy deck. But your claim is that the deck is not fair. So that would be a false positive because you have said something has changed when in fact it didn't. That makes sense? Is that, I don't know, in Donna's class, how much did you guys get into false positives, false negatives? At all or not at all? That's okay, because we're going to hit it a lot in this class. I kind of prime my 243s for this because it's important. I just read Di, I think it was one of the articles you sent me. I had read it about a month before, and you reiterated it, which was great. False positives make up a humongous chunk of what gets reported on in psych journals and soc journals and HDFS journals. And there's a very good reason for that. We're going to learn it starting today and finishing within the next 9 weeks we have together. But very often false positives get published. And there's a good probabilistic reason for that. You guys already know what it is, you just don't realize that you know what it is yet. So anyway, I want to make sure we talk about false positives and false negatives and why each is important in its own right. But that would be a false positive, yes? If the deck was okay and we said it wasn't. Okay. So what if the deck is okay? What if we say the deck is okay if it is okay? Is that okay? It's a lot of okays, I apologize. What would you call that? It's right. I mean, you made the right call, yeah? What would you call that if you had to call out True, false, positive, negative. What would you call that if the deck was fair and you said, you know what, yeah, it is fair. Caitlin, you got to vote?
True positive.
It wouldn't be a true positive. It would be a true use positive or negative, which we've already answered if it's not positive. Why would it be true negative? Back up to what a positive test result would be in this. Remember this is a false positive. Why is it false?
Because we're saying it's fair, but it's not. It isn't.
Right, we're saying it's not fair, but in fact it is. So we were wrong. That's why it's false, correct? We know it's false because we were wrong in our claim. So that's why this one's true, because we were correct in our claim. But now let's go back up to this one. Why is this one a positive test result? Because this is default, status quo. We assume this to be true, correct? But we falsely moved away from that. That makes it a positive test result, moving away from this. All right? So, when we say the deck is fair, that means we haven't moved away from that status quo. We're staying right with it. That makes it a negative test result. That's going in to test for Lyme disease, not having it, and the test coming back negative because you don't have it. That's a true negative right there, a true negative. A positive test result means, it's okay, this will make it, don't worry, every day we talk about this, Daniel. Every day we talk about this. A positive test result means you are flagging something. You are flagging something as changed. You can be right or you can be wrong. That's how to be wrong, a false positive. You flag something that changed when it actually didn't change. That's a false positive. Cassidy, go.
So just if it isn't changed, it's a negative?
If you say it isn't changed, then it's a negative. Right, that's what makes this interesting. There's two things going on. There's what's actually true in the population, and there's what you say is true in the population. If it hasn't changed, and you agree with the fact that it hasn't changed, that's a true negative. Now you guys, how many of you guys ever gotten a recall notice on your car? Did you take your car in to get it checked out?
Yeah.
And what happened? Did they come back and they fix it, or did they say nothing's wrong? They fixed it. Anybody ever have the car come back and say nothing's wrong?
Yeah.
That's happened to me a couple times. That's a false positive. Boom, recall notice. Shoo! Your gas tank might explode if you get rear-ended because a trailer hitch might puncture the gas tank, causing a spark, causing an explosion. It's like, this car's from 1995. I had it for 20 years. And then driving around with this bomb in the back of my car. But that's a false positive because they flagged it, but when I took it in to get it fixed, they said, oh, it's fine. It's fine. You don't even have a trailer hitch that's anywhere near your gas tank. Why'd you send this thing out, though? Because they'd rather err on the side of caution in that case, yes? It's worth the inconvenience of bringing a car in. Even though the car's okay. The car's okay, the deck is fair. It's worth falsely, positively identifying a potential problem, because if even one person dies from that, that's terrible, yes? That's a tragedy. Now you remember, and that's one reason. The other reason is a historical one. You guys might be too young to remember the Ford Pinto. I think it was the Pinto. I'm pretty sure it was the Ford Pinto.
I have one.
You had one, and you're still here. Thank you. Thank God. The Ford Pinto actually did have an exploding gas tank problem. Have you ever heard about this? It could be urban legend. I don't think it is. I believe it's true. Ford figured out that it would be cheaper to pay out the settlements of those injured by the explosions than to fix the problem, recall all the Ford Pintos and fix the problem. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Fight Club, Brad Pitt, sitting next to the lady in the airplane at the beginning of the movie, talks about working for a vehicle manufacturer that does exactly that. It's a little play, it's a little goof on the Ford Motor Company from the 70s. So that would be a false negative, not a false positive. False positive says, bring the cars in, even if they're okay, let's take a look at them, yeah? Maybe identify one or two that need to be fixed, but they'd rather err on the side of caution with a false positive, okay? And that's generally in safety concerns, false positives they're defaulted to because a false negative would be disastrous. More on that, and Danielle, the look on your face, I understand how this can be a little bit weird. But the idea is, you have to identify the status quo belief first. The status quo belief is, the car is fine. The car is fine, the gas tank isn't going to blow up. I mean, how many of you, when you stick your key in the car, assume, A, it's not going to start? Does anybody assume when you put your key in the car and turn it, it's not going to start? Probably not, right? The default setting is you turn the key, the car starts. You pick your phone up, press the power button, it fires up, you can check your email, right? You're driving down the road, It's not going to blow up while you're driving down the road. It's not the deep, unless you live in Jersey, you work for the mob. Your car's not going to blow up driving down the road. That's the default setting is the car is fine, the deck is fine. So a false positive would be the claim or the assumption that the car is not fine. Is everybody following that distinction? Okay, good. Now that's assuming the car is fine. Yes? That's assuming the car is fine. What if the car or the deck is not fine? So what if the deck isn't fair? The deck is not fair, and you say the deck isn't fair. Is that good? If the deck, in fact, is rigged.
That's correct.
It's correct. What would that be called? A true? It would be a true positive, wouldn't it? What? Now, why is it true? Why is it true?
Because your claim was true?
Because you're correct. Yeah, because your claim was true. You're saying the deck isn't fair, and in fact the deck isn't fair. So why is it now a true positive? What is a positive test? Remember, let's go back to 243, or for you guys, back 5 minutes. What does a positive test result mean? The test is indicating that something has changed, right? Changed from what? Default. Default is here. A positive test result will indicate a deviance from default, which would be over here, yes? So if you flag it as not fair, both of these have to be positive test results, right? Because your claim is it's not fair. Here's how you can be wrong by a positive test, because the deck was fair, but you said it wasn't. Here's a true positive, because it wasn't fair and you were correct. Both of these are positive test results. Go ahead, Linda.
So wouldn't the right on the bottom, wouldn't that be a true positive also?
What would that be?
False negative?
That's a false negative, isn't it?
I mean the other one.
What, the other one?
The one that says...
Ah! But you said the deck is fair, which means you said nothing changed. Nothing changed from fair. Both, this claim, thank you for bringing that back up. Here, when you say the deck isn't fair, you are flagging the deck as, you better go look at that again. There might be something wrong with that deck. Everybody following that logic?
Yeah.
When you say the deck isn't fair, flag the deck, check that deck again, right? Everybody following that basic idea? As soon as you flagged it, you've put a big bright sticker on it, therefore identifying it as something you need to look at again because there might be something up with that. Well, isn't that the definition of a positive test result? You go to the doctor, they take blood, they screen you for whatever, hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, whatever it is. This happened to me about 3 years ago. I tested positive for hypothyroidism, which is comical if A, you know what hypothyroidism it is, and B, you're watching me speak to you. But I tested positive for it. Now, either I don't have it or I do have it, but I tested positive for it. So either they were wrong with the positive test result, which it ended up being, or they were right, and I actually am hypothyroidic, and the test identified it. So a positive test result means you have flagged whatever that sample is as something has deviated from normal status quo, usual expected. A negative test result means everything comes back negative, everything's exactly the same as we would have expected. So if I had tested negatively for hypothyroidism, my doctor and I wouldn't even have the conversation that we had. There would be no need to have the conversation. Now, I argue that statement because a negative test can also be wrong, can it? A negative test can also be wrong, can it not? Of course, because if it comes back negative, it could be, you could be wrong. The deck could be rigged and you missed the fact that it was rigged. That didn't happen with us, correct? That didn't happen. What kind of a test result were we slapping down on this thing by the end of the day? Positive. Positive for sure, right? We were making the claim that the deck was rigged. So which two cells are we in? We're in one of these two. The question now is, how do we measure the likelihood of these things? How do we measure how correctly we think we are? That's what 244 is all about. It's how to metric. How small can we make? We want to make that pretty small, don't we? I mean, I would like to make that pretty small. I'd like to make that pretty big. I'd like to make that pretty big. I'd like to make that pretty small. You want to be wrong less than you are correct. So you don't want this to be 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%.
I don't think you quite understood what I was saying.
Maybe not.
So this bottom right.
Bottom right or bottom left?
The one that says right.
So bottom left. This,
Yes.
oh, I see. Bottom right, bottom left.
So is that one a true positive or a true negative?
What's the claim you're making?
That is fair.
So, what does fair mean? Do you think the deck is rigged?
No.
A positive test result means what? That you think the deck is
Fine.
No, that you think the deck is rigged. A positive test result means you have flagged the deck as potentially wrong. You have not done that here. You said the deck is fine. That's a true negative. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, let's do it together. False. True positive. Good. Say that again. I started the discussion there. True negative. Good. Those are that's the world we live in this class. Whenever you do any kind of a confidence interval, which we'll start learning about today, or hypothesis test, which we'll start learning about in like week 3 and 4, you live in this world. And generally, you live in 2 of these 4. For example, you guys made the claim, at least looks like about 9 of you made the claim, the deck was rigged after Tuesday. The deck was rigged, yes? Well, that means you're saying this. The deck is not fair, it is rigged. So that means you're either wrong or you're right. So we're not even going to look, just like in 243. Remember when you did the project, the last project in 243, we had these same exact 2x2s, but then we would shade out half of them. Because we were interested in positive or negative test results, we would shade half of them away. We would shade these 2 away based off of your claims, because you're making these claims up here. If your claim was the deck is totally fine, we would shade these 2 away and stop talking about that and only talk about these 2. And this is the point of that article you sent me, Di, and I'm so glad it's actually getting published now, is when you test negatively at your doctor's office for something, that's not a clean bill of health. It just means the test didn't catch it. Hopefully, there's a really, really, really small chance that the test missed it. In other words, there'd be a very, very small chance of a false negative, yes? I had you guys calculate some of those in 243 at that last project. And as it turns out, many tests that are out there today have extraordinarily disturbing false positive rates, but really, really, really reassuring false negative rates. In other words, if you don't have it, they don't tell you you have it. Excuse me, if you do have it, they don't tell you you don't very often. But you can be flagged as positive more frequently than you saw that in the breast cancer rates and things like that. The false positive rates were very, very high on some of those things. Now again, that could be a safety issue. That could be a, let's play it on the side of caution. Let's flag you, have you come in and look for more test results. The problem with that, as you saw with that project, was you can really wreak havoc on somebody's mental state by, oh, by the way, we think you might have tested positive for liquefaction of your spine. Exactly, right? Ew, kind of scary. Bring back in for more testing. Oh, please, yes, tell me your name again.
Melanie.
Melanie, go.
Are you talking more about like blood test results or pathologic results?
This is blood test results I'm speaking of, in general. I can't speak of pathological tests, but that's based on qualitative data, yes?
What?
The pathological type tests? Is that more qualitative data? Yeah, I can't speak for those, and I would... The trick with those is I would question them, not knowing much about them other than it's qualitative data versus quantitative. I question them even more because it becomes a coding issue. How the person drawing the qualitative data from the patient codes it. Like pain scale. Let me see if I'm making sure we're speaking the same language here. I'll make sure I am. Somebody asks, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? What's your pain? What's your pain? Okay, now we're going to do some PT. We're going to check you again. Scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? And they measure the difference in the pain scales that have been reported by the person. That's qualitative data, is it not? I mean, granted it's a number. It's a 1, it's a 2, it's a 7, it's an 8. But isn't that qualitative? Because what does 0 mean? No pain. It doesn't mean 0, it means no pain. And what does 10 mean? Right. Now, some of you said a lot of pain, some of you said severe pain. Some people would use the word excruciating pain. Some people would say it's so bad I can't function pain.
You always say 10.
You always say 2. And there's another problem. You always say 10. I want more drugs. So this is another problem with qualitative. In my argument, this is more of a mathematical argument maybe. In my argument, in my belief, qualitative data has to be carefully considered to make sure that it's consistent. Because of the subjectivity of it. And the subjectivity of the reporter. I mean, here what Austin just said makes me question it even more. But the fact of the matter is, with a blood test, it's actually looking for antibodies and things in the blood, which are countable and measurable. But qualitative data, like student evals, for example, every time you guys do a student eval, thank you for the ones last term, they were great, the first page of them has an average listed on it. Now what the hell is that an average of? It's an average of how you ranked me on a scale of like 0 through, was it 5 or 7 or 9, whatever the scale was. You know, your average is a 4.96, I think it was out of 5. What the hell does that even mean? What does a 5 mean? Do you remember? Probably not.
It's like the best.
What define best? I'm gonna keep asking for definitions all this whole class.
The best of the.
Strongly agree.
Or strongly agree.
Yes!
Or strongly disagree.
There's a statement and you strongly agree with it. What does 0 mean?
Strongly disagree.
What does 4 mean?
Agree.
Agree. What does 3 mean?
Neutral.
Actually, I think 2.5 would be purely neutral, wouldn't it? Between 0 and 5, if I'm doing the math. Maybe it's 1 to 5. Let's make it 1 to make the math easy. 1 to 5. 1, strongly disagree. 5, strongly agree. 2, disagree. 4, agree. 3, neutral. Can you average words? You can't, right? You can't add up an agree and a strongly agree and average them and go, ah! There's no word that's the average of 2 words. That's my problem with qualitative data, is we try to code them as numbers and then do stuff with the numbers, but those numbers have limited meaning when we're done with them. Whereas these, the blood tests I'm speaking of, they're actually looking for antibodies. Now, false positives also occur in other areas. I got flagged by YouTube once. I've uploaded about 2,000 videos to them now for class videos, homework videos, quiz solutions, and all that stuff. One of them, 2 terms ago, got flagged. They said, this contains malicious spyware content. I'm like, what doesn't? It came off my camera. But it was flagged as one that did. So every time I upload a video to YouTube, the assumption is that the deck is fair, correct? The assumption is I'm not trying to infiltrate YouTube with my web crawlers. I'm just putting videos up for you guys to watch if you need them later, yes? There's no reason to believe this isn't true, right? But what did YouTube say that one time in 2000? It wasn't fair. Boom! And it was a false positive. And I sent back a note to him like, guys, I've uploaded 2,000 videos the exact same way over the past 2 years. You flagged one. It's a pretty good false positive rate. Huh? 1 in 2,000? That's pretty small. I can live with that. I can live with that. That's just me. I asked all the other, well, there's like 3 of us on campus that do this. But nobody else had been flagged for a false positive for this stuff. So I mean, I'm thinking like 1 in 8,000, 1 in 10,000, that's a pretty good false positive rate. It's better than those damn ones we looked at in your project. I never heard back from YouTube, probably because it's me, and I ask them questions that involve numbers and it scares people off. But regardless.
One of your videos and went,
oh God. Well, the thing that scared me was, they flagged me as a false positive and they said, if this happens again, you might lose the entire channel. Which is why, you probably didn't even notice this, but I changed halfway through, I think it was last term, I changed halfway through the name of the site you were going to. I had to make a new channel to make sure I didn't get locked out of the first one and lose all the work I had done. So, the consequence of a false positive, or a second false positive, would be pretty crappy. Of course, you could use your 243. What would be the chance of a second false positive if the first false positive is 1 in 10,000? Well, the second false positive would also be essentially 1 in 10,000. So what's the chance of getting 2 false positives, assuming independence? What's 10,000 times 10,000? 100 million, yeah? 1 in 100 million. I have to upload 100 million videos to maybe guarantee 2 false positives somewhere along the way. I hope I can retire before then. I hope, maybe, ish. This will live on forever. Okay? Fair? Ish. Now Danielle, I love the look you gave me a few minutes ago. That's okay. We're gonna deal with that. I promise. We're gonna deal with that. We're gonna make you come to peace with the idea of a false positive versus false negative and a true positive versus true negative. Now, let's come back to the deck of cards in a second. I wanna start and stop.